Yes, hello and welcome along to the programme. It's Thursday. There is plenty of big games for us to look ahead to. You may notice there's a slight change in the lineup today. I'm, of course, not Kelly Cates. Kelly Summers with you for the next 90 minutes or so, alongside Darren Bent in for Righty today, and former Liverpool man Glenn Johnson and football journalist Julian Laurent. Great to have you all with us. We're all, I think, itching to get back to the action now after the international break, aren't we? Liverpool versus Leicester is the game that really does stand out. We're going to talk about that first. Darren, how much are you looking forward to this one? It's an intriguing one, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, you talk about the Premier League champions, as you said, but they've been rubbish with injuries. We spoke about it. But the confidence that Leicester are playing with at the minute, I mean, the free scoring, Vardy's in probably the form of his life. I like what Brendan Rodgers is doing now and there, but I think it's more so the unknown about Liverpool. What are they going to do defensively? Because we all know what they're like going forward. Mane, Firmino, Jota's come in and been tremendous. But it's what do they do defensively? Can they shut out probably the most informed striker in the Premier League? I think that's the question.
That is the question, isn't it, Glenn? As someone that knows a thing or two about defending at Liverpool, bit of a headache for Jurgen Klopp.
I think it's a massive headache. But to be honest, I know everyone was initially talking about, the loss of Van Dijk. But to be fair, since the season started, their record's been quite bad with him. Yeah. And obviously, look, you don't want to lose your key men ever, but they've just not been the same for some reason along the back. And like you say, they've got so many injuries. It's going to be interesting to see what sort of players they do field.
What do you think? You said there they've not been the same for some reason. Why is that reason? Because they've been, not even just last season, the season before as well. This has been building for quite some time. They've been so solid. What's changed?
I don't know. I think, of course, the level that they were performing at, it was so high. It's obviously it's difficult to maintain that. But I think a couple of little areas early on where, Van Dijk would be super relaxed and he'd try certain flicks, and last season they were all coming off. Whereas when they're not coming off, of course, they look really bad and teams can punish you. But I think it's maybe a bit of fatigue. They obviously didn't get the pre-season. Well, no one got the pre-season that they all wanted. But it's a hard one to put your finger on. But I think just at the wrong times, too many of them have been making key mistakes.
Do you know what as well? I think when they come back off a lockdown, I don't think they were the same. Then they won the title and their standards kind of slipped a little bit. But I think the start of this season, I think Leeds United kind of set the blueprint. That very first game of the season, where Leeds went out there, no fear, went at Liverpool, created chance after chance after chance. I think Leeds United kind of set the blueprint. That very first game of the season, where Leeds went out there, no fear, went at Liverpool, created chance after chance after chance, scored 3 goals at Anfield, which never really happens. And I think a lot of other teams, well, you know what, we can get something here. And I think that's carried on. But we know they've got very, very good players. But eventually, if you're defensively you're not strong enough, the Premier League's got some very, very good players, and eventually they'll keep unlocking the door. And I think that's why we've seen what's happened to Liverpool continue.
It's always difficult, isn't it, to defend a title? We've seen it historically in the Premier League. But it almost looks, with all of those things that you've just talked about there, Darren, and the craziness that is 2020, it's almost even harder this season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And let's not forget that they finished second the year before, but with 97 points, which is almost like winning the title, really. So it's 3 years in a row where you need all those points. And I think psychologically, it's difficult to maintain that degree of excellence.
Premier League. But it almost looks, with all of those things that you've just talked about there, Darren, and the craziness that is 2020, it's almost even harder this season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And let's not forget that they finished second the year before, but with 97 points, which is almost like winning the title, really. So it's 3 years in a row where you need all those points. And I think psychologically, it's difficult to maintain that degree of excellence, the degree of quality defensively, quality going forward as well. Even Jurgen Klopp probably struggled at times to find the answers and maybe thought like, we will outscore the opposition anyway, so there's no what focus so much on defending. I think he gets to a point against a team like Leicester where it could be just one goal in that game. And, they're so good defensively, Leicester, and so threatening on the counter-attack that Liverpool cannot afford to concede one goal, otherwise it could finish 1-0.
Don't tell us there's just going to be one goal. We've been looking forward to the return of Premier League football. We want the goal fest, don't we? Let's take a little look in a bit more detail at Liverpool's injury list as it stands, because I imagine that every time Jurgen Klopp's phone has rang during this international break, he has not wanted to answer it, because this is quite some list. Obviously, Joe Gomez is the standout one that's happened during this break, given what's happened to Virgil van Dijk. But when you look at that, Darren, it is scary, isn't it?
It is scary because you've got some big players there. We started to see the better Thiago when he came in with some great performances. He's out. Trent, your fullbacks. Fabinho was the one who stepped into that back line when someone got injured. He's no longer there. I mean, probably the biggest influence, other than Van Dijk, which is the obvious one, is the captain, Jordan Henderson. He is that kind of driving force. And we've seen already, when he's not on the pitch, standards slip a little bit. Do you know what I mean? When he's there, he doesn't allow that to happen. So This is where Jurgen Klopp's going to earn his money. We know he's a world-class manager. We know he's got the very best out of this squad. But when you've got that many key, not just squad injuries,
that's the thing, isn't
key
it?
injuries.
That's half of their starting, well, more than half of their starting lineup.
11,
yeah.
That's where he's going to earn his money. And I think that's where a lot of people are going to not question him, but go, well, can he come out of this period unscathed? And listen, he's doing a great job, but I'm not quite sure how you can replace them key players.
Yeah. Things I don't think you can replace them. No. If you took 7 players out of any of the top squads, they're all going to struggle. So I don't even think it's a matter of how Klopp proves himself as a manager. It's because you can ultimately only work with what you got, but he's certainly going to have to rely on some of the kids. But there's not a team in Europe that wouldn't struggle losing 7 of their starting 11.
Does this maybe show us how fortunate they were last season? Not fortunate because it's all to do with how you manage injuries and stuff as well, but it shows last season they had the rub of the green a little bit when it came to injuries.
Yeah, they did, you're right, although this is crazy. I mean, this is unprecedented. We've never seen so many injuries, not just at Liverpool, but everywhere, the whole of the world of football, really. So they've probably been a bit unlucky this year. Maybe playing so many games in the last 3 years for someone like Henderson, for Trent Alexander-Arnold. We saw Robertson, who played with Scotland last night, but had little niggles as well, because they played so much and with so much intensity as well, that there's a point where your body, I don't think, can respond anymore.
I wonder how Jurgen Klopp was feeling. Probably relieved that Andy Robertson did play for Scotland, but then a bit like, oh no, he's just played another 90-odd minutes in midweek ahead of that game. But surely he'll probably have to start, won't he, if he is fit, because of the situation that we've just seen.
Well, if he played 90 minutes, you'd fully expect him to start. But you're right. I mean, Jurgen Klopp at the minute must be a little bit like, every time his phone rings, I hope it's not another one. But this is the chance for squad members to step up now and show their worth. You look at Diego Jota, for instance. What a signing he's been. For me, probably one of the signings of the season. He probably would have gone to Liverpool thinking, when am I going to actually get game time behind Firmino, Salah and Mane? But he's gone, well, no, I relish the challenge and I'm going to show people that I can get in this team. And he's managed to do that. So I think we have to see Curtis Jones is going to have to step up, Reece Williams, all these kind of fringe type players now are going to have key roles, because as Johnny was saying there, any top team in Europe, when you lose 7 starters, not 7 squad members, 7 starters, other players have got to step up. You don't want to see Liverpool fall by the wayside, which I don't think he'll let them do, but they still need to find a way of getting the job done and getting results.
What do we make of some of the youngsters that have stepped in? Because we've seen some really impressive performances from a number of them when they have been called upon, because Jurgen Klopp has blooded them a little bit, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. Obviously, we haven't seen too much of them, but I think what we've seen, they look like players that could go on to have decent careers. But I think for a young kid in this sort of situation, it's okay coming into the Liverpool side, when you've got Van Dijk next to you, or, you've got Henderson in front of you and Salah maybe in front of you on the other side or whatever. But to come in and actually know you've got to perform. Of course, you've got to perform anyway, but, you've got the big team names around you that can get you away with a little error here and there. But if you're walking into a side that's struggling, that don't really have the names that could do that, that's really going to test their character.
He's got a point, because as a youngster as well, when I got into the team, I'm sure, Johnny, you're the same. When you're a youngster and you get into a team, you're kind of relying on the senior players to kind of show you the way. So if you do make a mistake, they're there to kind of hold your hand as such. But when there's no Van Dijk, there's no Henderson, there's none of these kind of senior players that are quite leaders on the pitch, these guys have got to grow up really, really fast. There's no time to kind of just, well, let me coast my way through it. You're in the thick of it then, and this is where you've got to step up.
And so even more so at centre-half as well.
Yeah.
No team really wants to put a young kid out to try him out at centre-half. It's quite an important position.
We also saw how the signing of Virgil van Dijk transformed Liverpool as well, so we know it's such an important part of that team as well, the centre-back position.
Yeah, well, exactly. And obviously, I'm thinking of as a fullback point of view. If I was a young kid and I walk in and I got Van Dijk next to me, I'd be like,
and Alisson behind you as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And as a
got
striker,
no worries.
as an opposition striker, if you're going into a game and you've got a young centre-back there as well, does that play on your mind as a striker playing against him?
Oh, Vardy this week, I'm telling you, Vardy will be thinking to himself, there's a chance here, because not only is he playing really, really well, but when you've got an inexperienced backline whereas regards have not played together that much, he's going to be thinking, all I've got to do, first 20 minutes, everything I'll be saying, put it over the top, pull it in behind them, getting in amongst them, because they're going to have to earn their money this week and defending against him, because he's so sharp, he's so electric, he's clever. And if I was Vardy, I'd be thinking, I'm going to get some joy here, because they can't, I don't think they're going to be able to contain him.
Well, Jules, he does have a bit of a habit of scoring against Liverpool, doesn't he? I think it's 7 in his last 11 against them. And as Darren said there, he'll be licking his lips, won't you, this weekend?
That's right. I mean, there's iconic ones like this one, obviously. That was the year of the title. So some are a bit older compared to in the more recent games, if you want. But he's good at scoring against all the top side in the country too. We saw last season, though, the 4-0 win away at Leicester from Liverpool. They were really impressive that night. And also there's an argument to be made that if you can keep Vardy quiet. Somehow, if you can cut the relationship between the midfielders and especially Tielemans, for example, or Barnes, with Vardy, then he's far more isolated up front, doesn't get the chances, doesn't score the goals. So I think instead of maybe just watching it as Vardy against Phillips and Matip, or Matip and Williams, whoever plays, it's more if you can just not him have the ball, so cut the relationship between Barnes and him, Tielemans and him, even Mendy and him, then maybe you've got something there.
Yeah.
There's a player there that you mentioned as well, before we talk a little bit more about Leicester. Joel Matip, wanted to mention him. He's played a couple of 90 minutes this season, but hasn't played back-to-back games. I very much enjoyed earlier this week. I saw one of those memes on Twitter where they'd wrapped him up in bubble wrap, saying that's what Jurgen Klopp would like.
It's probably the truth. That's what they do at the training ground.
It's probably what Jurgen Klopp would have liked to have done with him, isn't it, really? And all of his players coming back from international duty. But what do you make of Joel Matip? Because he hasn't, but he now is going to have to start, presuming he does stay injury-free. Yeah,
and the good thing he has is the experience. Compared to a Reece Williams or even a Nate Phillips. He has been there before. He's played many big games before, even if he's not number one.
Because you all of a sudden get to the point where you're back against a wall and you can't afford any more hiccups or any more injuries. So, of course, he would have had certain plan throughout the week of how they want to set up and train and certain intensity they want to get to. But when you're back to the bare bones, there will definitely be a time where, you pull the handbrake up a little bit and say, lads, look after yourself, because we're going to need you at the weekend. And obviously you don't earn any points Monday to Friday. So I've worked with many managers where they don't really mind what goes on Monday to Friday. As long as you put a shift in and get some points on a Saturday, it's a business industry in the end.
I mean, more walkthroughs than anything. Formation, that kind of just like...
Dream as a player, isn't it?
Yeah.
Non-contact,
Kind of shadow playing like this. If
the strikers like it.
Yeah. If the ball's here, you get in this position, it'd be that type of situation. But as Glenn was saying there, sometimes when your back's against the wall and you're down to bare bones, which they are, you need to be clever. You can't go out there and five-a-sides, all that goes out the window. And as a player, it's a little bit boring when you know when there's no five-a-side and you're doing shape all week. But at the end of it, if he gets a result, that it'd have been 100% the right call.
Darren alluded to the signing of Diogo Jota. We obviously saw Mo Salah on that injury list there because he is reportedly still isolating due to COVID-19. How much of a miss will he be, and how beneficial has it been to the fact that Jota has started so well at Liverpool, given the fact that now he does look like he's going to have a regular opportunity to play?
It's a big relief, of course, because we've said for many years now that front three they've played too many games anywhere, and there was a lack of rotation, maybe because Klopp didn't have a fourth player that could come in the rotation. Now he's got that with Jota, and then when Salah is missing, or Mane is missing, or even Firmino is missing, then he's got the perfect replacement. And I think Jota brings something very different to Salah, of course. It's a different style of player, different profile. But what he's shown so far, regardless of the position we played, and Klopp has played them four together, by the way, against City and against Sheffield United as well. But Jota is regardless of the position we played, and Klopp has played them four together, by the way, against City and against Sheffield United as well. But Jota is such a creative player. He's got that pace. He can play in very, very versatile positions if you want. It's an amazing player to have in your squads.
Does it change the dynamic of that front three, having Jota in there, do you think? How much of a miss will Salah be? Because Jules has just kind of spoke very highly there of Jota, but he is a different player.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Salah's going to take some replacing because he scores so many goals. Even when he's not playing as well as we know he can do, he still manages to score between 15 and 20 goals every season. But Jota's stepped in and been absolutely superb. I mean, he's played centre forward, he's played wide left, he can play on the right. It looks like he'll play this weekend, but it's just the energy that he comes with. And when Liverpool signed him, a lot of people kind of spoke about the price tag and said, well, it's a lot of money. But it didn't really surprise me because he was superb at Wolves. The only surprise to me was that there weren't more people in for him, because I thought, what a top player. And Liverpool got the jump on everyone to go and sign someone like him. So I think for Jurgen Klopp, I mean, it's a dream to have him because you know he can slot in any one of them front threes. And not only that, wherever he plays, he'll always play with quality. And he's been scoring goals as well. So what a signing he's been.
When we looked at that lineup there, we talk often about the spine of a team and the fact that that's often where it's quite strong. And normally we have Virgil van Dijk. We talked about the defence. What about Curtis Jones there, sitting in the middle of midfield? What do you make of him?
Yeah, what I've seen, I'm a big fan. So what I've seen so far, I mentioned it earlier. It's great as a young player to come in when the shackles are off, because you know you've got top players surrounding you. Obviously, it's going to be a bit of a different test because he won't have those guys that bail him out if he is to make a mistake. So it'd be interesting to see what sort of character he's got in terms of how he rolls his sleeves up and how he sort of tries to step into like someone like Hendo's shoes.
Psychologically, What is the mood like, do you think, in that Liverpool squad at the moment, Darren? Because it must take its toll on the rest of the players when they see all of these injuries happening around them.
Yeah, but look at that Liverpool dressing room, and obviously Glenn will know better than me. But I feel there's a real determination there from these Liverpool players that they've got a lot of injuries and people writing them off. When Van Dijk was the one who went down first, everyone went, that's their season over. So people were like, well, no, we're going to step up and get another result. Then Fabinho went down, and for me, there just seems to be this attitude. I don't know if it's Jurgen Klopp filtering down to his players. They're just going to take each challenge as it comes. They keep losing injuries, but they still keep finding a way to win games. So I think in the dressing room, yeah, of course you'll be looking around thinking, we've lost a lot of our better players. But there'll be players like Naby Keita, for instance, who's been on the kind of fringes of it. We've got to hold a second here. Don't forget about me. I'm a good player as well. I'm going to step up and I'm going to put performance in.
I think they want to prove a point. I think.
Yeah.
You know, because they're all top teams. All top players. So none of them want to think, that they're only good because of one player. Yeah. So they're going to want to think, right, well, like I say, Van Dijk went down first, so they all had to stand up to say, look, we don't just need one player. But obviously then the list obviously kept getting bigger and bigger and they had to keep proving it. But like I say, in their own right, they're top players. So they're going to want to stand up and prove everybody wrong that's, doubting them now, even though they have got a very long list.
I want to pick up on something that these guys have just said there, Jules, because do you think we need to give Liverpool a bit more credit for the fact that they have had this backdrop of all of these injuries and they are still doing pretty well in the league? It's not all doom and gloom, really. They're still managing to perform, even if not completely at their best.
That's true. And then we saw in the Champions League as well, the 5-0 win away at Atalanta, for example, which was probably the best performance of the season, how good they were, how efficient they were. In the league, they've had some games where they had to really dug deep and struggle to win against West Ham, for example. We were talking about it before the show. Against Sheffield United as well, they kept going behind. They kept conceding goals as well, which is they're not as efficient as they were before, maybe. But the results are there. And I think this team has evolved from a team that was free-flowing football, scoring lots of goals, to a very strong mentally team. It was like, you know what, we can win 1-0 and we'll be very happy with that. We don't need to go and score 3 anymore. And I think that's what has changed a lot after the win last season, the trophy.
We talk about giving Jurgen Klopp lots of credit for doing what he's doing with Liverpool's injuries. I don't think we should really forget the injuries that Leicester City have had as well, because they've had a brilliant start to the season. And they've had their injuries as well, Darren.
Yeah, listen, they've lost quite a number of key players. I mean, they've still got Ndidi, I think he's still out as well. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of his. But yeah, Brendan Rodgers has managed to kind of galvanise this team to put in the performances they are. I mean, as we spoke about Vardy, how good he's been. Harvey Barnes has been superb. I mean, Fofana, he's come from there and he's been absolutely superb. What a signing. So, again, you'd have to say, Brendan Rodgers, fantastic job. Done the same thing last season, started the season absolutely superb, and we wouldn't happen. We kind of tailed off. But I think Brendan Rodgers is a smart enough coach to kind of understand that we had them issues last season. That won't happen again this season. I don't think it will.